My name is Celeste Harmon. I'm 29 years old. For most of my life, my parents told me I was the difficult one, while my brother Declan collected Yale diplomas and investment portfolios. They dismissed my anxiety disorder at every dinner table, cut me out of financial decisions, and paid me half of what they paid him. But on the evening of Declan's firm launch party at the Ritz-Carlton, in front of 400 guests, a quiet woman in a navy dress slipped an envelope into my hands, and inside it was proof that everything my family said about me was a lie. What they didn't know was that my grandfather had been paying attention. He'd been watching for years, and he'd left me something that would shake the Harmon Group to its foundation. The Harmons were Pacific Northwest timber money, the kind of family whose name appeared on university buildings and civic center lobbies. My father, Warren Harmon, ran Harmon Group Ventures, a commercial development and land holdings company that my grandfather, Clifton Harmon, had built from a single warehouse lease in Portland in 1962. By 2024, the company was valued at $87 million. I was born with generalized anxiety disorder, formally diagnosed at 8. The world felt perpetually too loud, too fast, too unpredictable, like standing in a room where all the walls were slowly moving inward. My parents' response wasn't patience. It was irritation. When I was 11, they enrolled Declan in junior investment seminars, private debate coaching, AP curriculum tutoring with a Columbia graduate who charged $350 an hour. When I asked about seeing a therapist to help manage school, my father just exhaled through his nose. "Celeste, we've spent a fortune trying to help you. At some point, a person has to choose not to be fragile." I was 11, I believed him. So I learned to survive without support. Notebooks became my anchor, color-coded, meticulously organized systems that helped me manage the noise inside my head when nothing else could. I developed a habit of arriving early to every obligation so I could stand in the space alone, let it settle around me, become familiar before the crowd arrived. And every Saturday morning, I'd drive across town to my grandfather Clifton's house on the edge of the Willamette River, where he'd sit with me on the back porch and tell me stories about the early days, not the polished company mythology, but the real version, full of bad deals, lucky breaks, and hard lessons. "Celeste," he told me once, his calloused hand resting on the porch railing between us, "you feel everything more than most people. That costs you something, but it also gives you something. You notice what others ignore." I didn't fully understand what he meant then. I would, eventually. But first I had to survive another 20 years of being the Harmon family's private inconvenience. Easter 2019. 17 relatives gathered in my parents' Lake Oswego dining room, coffered ceilings, linen tablecloths, the annual pageant of Harmon family achievement. My father stood at the head of the table, wine glass lifted. "I have an announcement," he said, his voice carrying the measured authority of a man who treated every room like a boardroom. "Declan has been accepted into the Wharton MBA program, full merit scholarship." Applause. My mother clapped with visible relief. My older brother Declan smiled the way he always did, accepting praise the way other people accept oxygen, naturally, without gratitude. "My son, Warren," continued, "will be the first Harmon to attend Wharton since his grandfather's generation. He's going to position this company for the next 50 years. More applause." Aunt Jolyn pressed her hand to her heart. Uncle Stephen made a toast. Then my father's attention drifted down the long table, to me and Celeste. Polite laughter, the slightly too long kind. The kind people emit when they're waiting for a real sentence to arrive. Declan didn't correct it. He laughed along, just briefly, just enough. I looked down at my plate. The glazed carrots blurred at the edges. Beneath the table, a hand reached mine. A firm, warm grip. My grandfather Clifton, seated to my left, squeezed once without a word. When I looked up, his eyes were fixed on my father, steady, unreadable, the expression of a man making note of something he would not forget. He didn't speak. Not then. But 2 weeks later, he called and asked me to come by on Saturday. Said he wanted to show me something. I didn't know it at the time, but that Easter dinner had set something moving. Something that would take 5 years to arrive. After finishing my degree from a state school in 2021, not a prestigious institution, never a prestigious institution, I applied for a role at Harmon Group. I wanted to demonstrate that I could contribute, that there was a place for me inside the thing my grandfather had built. My father agreed to bring me on as an operations coordinator. Salary: $44,000 a year. That same quarter, Declan joined as VP of Strategic Development. His compensation: $265,000 plus performance incentives. My job involved scheduling site inspections, maintaining vendor contact logs, and handling correspondence that no one else wanted to touch. I wasn't invited to a single strategy session. I was never copied on a contract negotiation, but I was always in the room, or near it. I discovered something during those months of being invisible. Because no one thought to lower their voice around me, I heard everything. And because I'd spent years building systems to manage a mind that wouldn't stop noticing, I was extraordinarily good at holding information. Tracking patterns, identifying inconsistencies, connecting details across meetings that no one else was linking together. My grandfather had taught me this, too. On those Saturday mornings at the River House, he'd pull out old site surveys and walk me through them, not as a property manager, but as a reader of landscapes. He didn't just look at what was there. He looked at what was missing. You look at a site like you're already inside it, he told me in 2020, the last healthy year before his condition worsened. Your father looks at land and sees an asset. You look at it and see a story. That same morning, he'd pressed a small tin box into my hands. Olive green, hinged lid, the kind of thing you'd find at a hardware store. Hold onto this, he'd said. Don't go through it yet. You'll know when it's time. I carried the box home, put it on the shelf in my spare room, and tried not to wonder too hard about what was inside. March 2020. Clifton Harmon's house, Willamette River. He was 84 then. Still sharp, but slower, his movements deliberate in the way of men who have decided to stop rushing. We sat in the sunroom overlooking the water. The walls were lined with framed photographs. Clifton at the groundbreaking of his first Portland warehouse in 1962. Clifton with the governor, 1978. Clifton accepting a Regional Business Leadership Award in 1991. My father appeared in none of them. I built Harmon Group from a handshake and a lease, he said. One building, 4 decades of choices. Your father, he paused, looked at the river. Your father received it. He didn't construct it. He doesn't understand what it means to make something from nothing. Grandpa, he respects achievement. He just defines it in a particular way. He turned from the window. I define people by how they treat those who aren't useful to them. He looked at me steadily. You're the only one in this family who doesn't make people feel like a transaction. He handed me the tin box again. I'd forgotten it at home. This time, he didn't let go of my hands immediately. There's something inside that you may need one day. Not soon. But someday, he met my eyes. When Warren shows you exactly what he's decided your value is, you'll be ready. I wanted to press him. What's inside? What do you mean? But Clifton changed the subject, the way he always did when a conversation had reached its necessary limit. He asked about a hiking trail I'd mentioned. He told me about a book he was reading. 14 months later, he was gone, heart failure. I sat with him in his final days, the only family member who stayed. The tin box remained on my shelf. April 2024. The email arrived on a Wednesday morning. Subject: Organizational Update, Confidential. Dear Celeste, as part of a strategic review of operational roles, your current position will be eliminated effective August 1st, 2024. HR will be in touch regarding transition options. I read it 4 times. Then I sat very still, the way I'd learned to sit when anxiety threatened to become something larger, something louder. They were letting me go. That evening, I stayed at my desk until the floor was empty. Through the partitions separating my workstation from my father's corner office, I heard 2 voices. Warren and my mother, Diane. She can't still be here when Declan takes over, my father was saying. It creates a narrative problem. People ask why she's in a support role, why we haven't developed her. What it says about the family. What does it say? A pause. That we didn't believe in her. Which, well, that's been true for a while, hasn't it? My mother's response came softly. We did what we could, Warren. She was always going to need more than we knew how to give. Exactly. So the kindest thing is a clean break. Good severance. She'll find something appropriate. I pressed my palm flat against my desk. $44,000 a year. My apartment in Southeast Portland cost $1,600 a month. No savings to speak of. If I lost this job, I had perhaps 6 weeks before I was in real trouble. But the money wasn't what made my chest tight. It was the clarity arriving in my bones like cold water. If I accepted this, if I let them define my limits, I would spend the rest of my life as the family footnote. Not because I had failed, because I had never been given the conditions to succeed. Declan's firm launch party was tomorrow. I wondered what other announcements my father had prepared. May 22nd, 2024. The Ritz-Carlton, Portland, Grand Ballroom. 400 guests packed the room. Real estate developers, land investment partners, attorneys from regional firms, extended family I knew only from holiday cards. Warm amber lighting across white linen. A string quartet in the corner. This was Warren Harmon's stage, the performance of a man who had built something, or at least convincingly inherited it. I stood near the entrance in a simple burgundy dress, $65 from a consignment shop in Hawthorne. Everyone else wore custom or near custom. My mother found me before I located my assigned table. Celeste. Diane's eyes moved over me in a single efficient sweep. Is that what you're wearing? It's what I have, Mom. She straightened her bracelet. You're at table 31, near the bar staging area. She lowered her voice. Tonight is for Declan. Whatever you're carrying, leave it in the parking garage. She turned before I could answer. Table 31 was partially behind a room divider. My neighbors were second cousins and a business associate's spouse. From my seat, I could see the main platform, the enormous framed photo of Declan in front of his new firm's logo, and near the far wall, standing alone with a cup of coffee she hadn't touched, a woman in navy. Mid-50s, compact, watching the room the way a person watches a room when they've come to find one specific face. Her eyes found mine, something shifted in my stomach. At 8:15, the quartet stopped. My father took the stage. Good evening. His voice filled the room effortlessly. Tonight we're here to celebrate a young man who has done something very difficult. He's built something of his own. Applause. Declan launched a successful boutique development advisory firm, ranked in Portland Business Journal's top newcomers. He passed his series 65 at 26. He is, in every way, the next chapter of what this family has worked to become. More applause. My grandfather's name was invoked once, ceremonially. The way you invoke someone you're done with. But tonight, Warren continued, the applause rising again before he'd finished. I'm not just celebrating his achievement. I'm making an announcement about the future of Harmon Group. Declan joined his father on stage. He looked relaxed, inevitable. Effective upon my retirement, Declan Harmon will assume full ownership of Harmon Group Ventures, including our primary asset portfolio and all associated equity. Additionally, his firm will be formally contracted as the group's exclusive strategic advisory at terms to be finalized next quarter. The room erupted. I stared at the centerpiece. A tall white orchid. The woman in navy was moving through the crowd. Coming toward me, my cousin's spouse leaned over. Celeste, right? So where does all of this leave you? I opened my mouth, closed it. What was there to say? That I'd just been formally written out. That the termination notice in my inbox was only the preamble? The woman in navy stopped at my table. Miss Harmon. She kept her voice low, unhurried. My name is Patricia Engel. She handed me a card. Bergman and Associates, Estate and Trust Law. I served as your grandfather's legal counsel for the last 11 years. My grandfather. The words landed like a stone into still water. What is this? She didn't sit. She placed an envelope on the table in front of me, thick cream stock, sealed with red wax, a notary stamp pressed into the center. He left instructions, she said quietly. I was to deliver this on the evening your father formally transferred the company's future to your brother. She glanced at the stage, where Warren and Declan were still accepting handshakes. I believe that's just occurred. My hands were unsteady as I lifted the envelope. Miss Engel, what's inside? A document your family doesn't know exists. She met my eyes. Read it somewhere private. I'll be available when you have questions. She walked away. I couldn't stay in that ballroom. I pushed through a service door, found a quiet corridor near the coat storage. The hum of the party became something distant, muffled. I sat on a folding chair beneath a fluorescent light and broke the seal. 3 pages, formal legal typography. A notary stamp dated October 9, 2019. I read slowly. The words rearranged themselves when I rushed, anxiety making letters slippery, so I breathed and read carefully. I, Clifton James Harmon, being of sound mind, do hereby revoke all prior testamentary documents and declare this my final will and testament. Halfway down the second page, my eyes caught on a passage to my granddaughter, Celeste Diane Harmon. I bequeath 51% of my shares in Harmon Group Ventures LLC, valued at approximately $44 million, together with all voting rights thereto. I read it 3 more times. 51%. Controlling interest, the will continued. This bequest is made with full knowledge of my son Warren's treatment of Celeste. She has been systematically excluded from the company she was qualified to serve, not due to any limitation of hers, but due to limitations in how she has been seen. Celeste is not fragile. Celeste was failed, and I will not allow her father's contempt to be her inheritance. A sound escaped me. Not quite a sob, something older. He had seen it. He'd seen all of it. I'm going to stop here for just a moment. If you've ever been dismissed by the people who were supposed to believe in you the most, if you know what it feels like to be in the room, but treated like you're not really there, I want you to type the word scene in the comments right now. Let me know I'm not telling this story alone. And if you want to find out what happened when Celeste walked into that boardroom, stay with me, because we are just getting started. Now, back to the story. Condition. To activate this bequest, Celeste must formally request an emergency board meeting within 72 hours of receiving this document. Failure to act within this window will render this bequest void, and all assets will transfer under the 2014 testament. 72 hours. The window would close at 8:15 p.m. on May 25th. I leaned against the wall, the document against my chest. My grandfather had left me a key. All I had to decide was whether I was willing to unlock the door. Patricia Engel was waiting near the exit when I came out. You read it. The 72-hour condition. My voice didn't sound entirely like my own. Why would he do that? She studied me because he knew you. She offered me a second card with a handwritten number on the back. He told me to tell you, I built this company alone because no one believed I could. I'm leaving it to you because I know you'll understand the weight of it. She glanced toward the ballroom, where my father's voice was still audible. If you want to proceed, you'll need 3 board signatures to request an emergency session. I can help you identify who to approach, but the choice is yours. I looked at the envelope in my hands. Through the ballroom doors, my father was laughing with a group of investors. My mother stood beside him, touching his arm at intervals the way you touch something you've worked very hard to keep. If I actually did this, I would detonate the structure my family had spent 20 years building. But if I said nothing, I would confirm their story about me. The fragile one. The one who didn't have what it takes. The one who accepted whatever she was given because she'd never learned to ask for more. Miss Engel. My voice was steadier than I expected. I'll call you tomorrow morning. She allowed herself a small nod. He said you'd say that. That night, in my apartment, I opened the tin box. My roommate was visiting her parents for the weekend. The city outside my window was making its ordinary nighttime sounds. I sat on my bed with the box on the duvet and lifted the lid. Inside, a handwritten letter on Clifton's personal stationery, a document with a 1962 date and a city clerk's stamp, and a small flash drive, the kind sold at airport gift shops, probably added years after everything else. I unfolded the letter first. Celeste, if you're reading this, Patricia has found you, and Warren has done what I feared he would. I'm sorry I couldn't change it while I was alive. But I can do something about it now. The enclosed document is the original operating agreement from 1962, establishing Harmon Group with provisions I wrote myself. Among them, a clause that founding share voting rights cannot be diluted without unanimous board consent. Your father tried to have that clause removed in 2017. The board declined, 4 votes to 3. I was one of those 4. The drive contains the meeting record from that session. Warren's motion, his stated rationale, the vote count. He argued that the founding-era governance structure was no longer suited to modern operational needs. What it was no longer suited to was being challenged by me. If I actually did this, I would detonate the structure my family had spent 20 years building. But if I said nothing, I would confirm their story about me. The fragile one. The one who didn't have what it takes. the one who accepted whatever she was given because she'd never learned to ask for more. Miss Angel. My voice was steadier than I expected. I'll call you tomorrow morning. She allowed herself a small nod. He said you'd say that. That night, in my apartment, I opened the tin box. My roommate was visiting her parents for the weekend. The city outside my window was making its ordinary nighttime sounds. I sat on my bed with the box on the duvet and lifted the lid. Inside, a handwritten letter on Clifton's personal stationery, a document with a 1962 date and a city clerk's stamp, and a small flash drive, the kind sold at airport gift shops, probably added years after everything else. I unfolded the letter first. Celeste, if you're reading this, Patricia has found you, and Warren has done what I feared he would. I'm sorry I couldn't change it while I was alive, but I can do something about it now. The enclosed document is the original operating agreement from 1962, establishing Harmon Group with provisions I wrote myself. Among them, a clause that founding share voting rights cannot be diluted without unanimous board consent. Your father tried to have that clause removed in 2017. The board declined, 4 votes to 3. I was one of those 4. The drive contains the meeting record from that session. Warren's motion, his stated rationale, the vote count. He argued that the founding-era governance structure was no longer suited to modern operational needs. What it was no longer suited to was being challenged by me. He has been trying to inherit this company rather than earn it since the day I handed him his first management title. Use what's here carefully, Celeste, not for punishment, for correction, all my love. Grandpa Clifton. I plugged in the drive. The file opened immediately. Board session minutes, November 2017, 11 pages. Warren Harmon's attempt to quietly strip his own father of the authority to disagree with him, documented, time-stamped, preserved. May 23, 9 o'clock m, the number I called belonged to a woman named Beverly Ackheffer. She'd been a Harmon Group board member since 1999 and had known my grandfather since long before that. Celeste Harmon, she said when she answered, I've been wondering when you'd find the nerve to call. You knew about the will. Clifton told me himself, 3 months before he died. Her voice was straightforward, unhurried. He wanted someone on the board to be ready. Do you want to proceed? I need 3 board members to sign the emergency petition. You need 2 besides yourself, and as majority shareholder, you qualify. I'm one. She paused. There are at least 3 other members who have been quietly dissatisfied with Warren's governance style for years. They've been waiting for someone to go first. Who? Martin Cheung, Rebecca Tolliver. They've both been on the receiving end of Warren's unilateral management. I'll make some calls. Another pause. Celeste, I want you to understand what you're walking into. Warren is going to fight this. He's going to be loud about it. He's been loud about me my whole life. At least this time I'll be in the room. Beverly was quiet for a moment. Then, Clifton said you had more in you than you knew. I'm starting to see what he meant. She cleared her throat. Petition will be ready tonight. Board meeting request, May 25th, 10 o'clock am, Harmon Group offices, 18th floor. Thank you, Beverly. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you're in that room and you've said what needs saying. May 24th. My father found out about the board meeting at 3:30 p.m. I know this because Declan called me 40 minutes later. What have you done? His voice was controlled in the way of people who are choosing control because losing it would cost them something. I don't know what you're referring to, Declan. There's an emergency board session scheduled for tomorrow, requested by Beverly Ackheffer. Beverly Ackheffer hasn't initiated anything in years, so what did you do? Maybe she has concerns she wanted to raise. Don't play that game with me, Celeste. His composure thinned. If you're trying to make a scene because you're upset about the announcement, I'm just doing my job. Same as I've always done. He hung up. 25 minutes later, my father walked past my workstation without acknowledging me, closed his office door with deliberate force, and got on the phone. This is Beverly being dramatic. She's been looking for an excuse to grandstand for years. Yes, Celeste is involved, but honestly, Declan, she's not a threat. She can barely hold a room. I smiled at my monitor. For the first time in my adult life, being underestimated felt like a structural advantage. That night, I prepared everything. 3 copies of the will, the 2017 board minutes transferred to my phone as backup, a short presentation, not an argument, just a sequence of documented facts. Patricia Engel confirmed she would attend as authenticating counsel. Beverly texted at 10:45 p.m. petition filed. 3 signatures. See you tomorrow. I barely slept. But it wasn't anxiety keeping me awake. For once, it was something forward-facing. Anticipation. May 25, 2024. 9:50 a.m., the elevator opened on the 18th floor of Harmon Group's Portland Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the river. The kind of office designed to signal permanence. I stepped out in a charcoal blazer, borrowed from my neighbor, the sleeves slightly long, carrying a leather portfolio I'd had since college. The security desk. Name? Celeste Harmon. I'm an employee with business before the board. You're not on the authorized attendee list. Is there a problem? Declan's voice behind me. I turned. He looked like a person who had spent his whole life being the answer to every question in the room. Celeste. His smile was practiced. What are you doing up here? I have a presentation for the board. A presentation. He laughed, a measured, condescending sound. About what? I'm not at liberty to share the subject matter in the hallway. His smile flickered. Before he could respond, my father appeared at the far end of the corridor, flanked by 2 senior partners. What's happening here? Celeste wants to attend the board meeting, Declan said, already softening the situation into something manageable. I was explaining why that's not actually, a voice called from inside the boardroom. She is standing to attend. Beverly Acaffer appeared in the doorway. 70 years old, silver-locked, composed the way mountains are composed, not rigid, just certain of themselves. I invited her. She gestured me forward. Let her in. Warren's jaw worked. For a moment the hallway was a held breath. Fine, my father's voice was glass over gravel. Let her present. We'll see where this goes. The boardroom was an oval of polished oak and leather. 12 chairs. Watercolor prints of the original Portland warehouse on the walls. And above the credenza, a framed photograph of Clifton Harmon, taken at a groundbreaking in 1962, his hand extended toward an empty lot, the whole city behind him. I felt his eyes in the room. 12 board members settled. Warren at the head, Declan to his right, not an official member, but positioned there anyway, in the space already being prepared for him. Patricia Engel sat in the corner with her briefcase. She caught my eye, nodded. Thomas Whitaker, the board chair, called the session to order. This emergency session was requested by Beverly Acaffer, Martin Cheung, and Rebecca Tolliver. Beverly, you have the floor. Beverly rose. Thank you, Thomas. The matter involves a document which has recently come to my attention, a document with direct implications for the ownership structure of this company. I yield my time to Celeste Harmon. All eyes turned to me. Declan's expression said this would be brief. My father said it would be embarrassing. I stood. My hands were steady. Thank you, Miss Acaffer. And thank you to the board for the time. I opened my portfolio. What I'm about to share may come as a surprise. I ask only that you consider the documentation before drawing conclusions. Warren raised his hand. Thomas. Before we give this any more weight than it deserves. He stood, measuring his words with the deliberateness of a man who'd spent 4 decades making rooms obey him. My daughter works in operations coordination. She has no background in law or finance. She has no strategic experience. He paused. I say this with care because Celeste has always faced challenges that make certain professional environments difficult for her. We've done our best to support her. But what we're seeing here, I believe, is a response to personal hurt, not a legitimate business matter. Declan nodded beside him. Mr. Harmon, Thomas Whitaker's voice was quiet but terminal. You'll have time to respond. Miss Harmon made the request and she is entitled to proceed. Warren sat. I looked at him, then at Declan, and felt something in my chest go very still. They weren't protecting the company. They weren't even protecting each other. They were protecting a story, the version in which I had no standing, no weight, no right to take up space in this room. I was done living inside their story. I pulled the document from my portfolio. I won't be discussing my professional limitations today, I said, and placed the will on the table. I'll be discussing this. The room changed. This is the last will and testament of Clifton James Harmon, founder of this company. Notarized October 9, 2019. Warren's color shifted. That's not possible. My father left a will in 2014. I have it. You have the prior will. I kept my voice even. Under Oregon estate law, a subsequent valid testament automatically supersedes all earlier documents. This will was executed 5 years after the one you have. I slid the document to Thomas Whitaker. Miss Engel, would you please confirm this document? Patricia Engel, Bergman and Associates, she said, approaching the table. I served as Clifton Harmon's personal attorney from 2010 until his death in 2021. I prepared and witnessed this will on October 9, 2019, in the presence of 2 independent notaries. The original is held in escrow with U.S. Bank Trust. Thomas Whitaker examined the document. His eyebrows rose. This bequeaths 51% of Harmon Group shares. He looked up. To you, Miss Harmon. A sound moved around the table. It's fabricated, Declan said. It isn't, Patricia said, and I'd advise against making that claim without evidence. Warren set his palms flat on the table. My father was unwell the last years of his life. He was susceptible to. I pulled out my phone. Perhaps this is relevant context, I said, and pressed play on the 2017 board session recording. My father's voice came through clearly. The founding-era governance provisions are outdated and impede modern decision-making. I move to remove the original voting rights protection and transfer founding share authority from Clifton Harmon to executive leadership. He no longer has the perspective to govern this company effectively. I stopped the recording. The silence was the kind that precedes a significant shift in weather. That was a private board session, Warren said. Clifton was in that session, I said. He recorded it as his right as a shareholder. Thomas Whitaker set the will down carefully. Miss Harmon, will you read the central passage aloud for the record? I nodded. Breathed. To my granddaughter, Celeste Diane Harmon, I bequeath 51% of my shares in Harmon Group Ventures LLC, along with all voting rights thereto. Pause. This bequest is made with full knowledge of my son Warren's treatment of Celeste. She has been systematically excluded from the company she was qualified to serve, not due to any limitation of hers, but due to limitations in how she has been seen. Celeste is not fragile. Celeste was failed, and I will not allow her father's contempt to be her inheritance. Declan made a sound that wasn't quite a word. I looked at my father. He had gone very still. Clifton Harmon built this company, I continued. He tried to protect it while he was alive. He saw what was being done to me, not as someone who'd failed the company, but as someone the company had never been given the chance to discover. I choose who carries the weight of what I built. I choose Celeste. Thomas Whitaker set down his reading glasses. Miss Engel, this document is legally binding? It is. The 2014 will is superseded. As of this meeting, Celeste Harmon is majority shareholder of Harmon Group Ventures. Beverly Auckhaffer's expression remained still, but her eyes held the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd been waiting a very long time for a room to catch up. This will be contested, Declan said. His voice had gone brittle. You can't just show up with a document. Your grandfather's attorney just authenticated it in front of 12 witnesses, Thomas Whitaker said. His tone suggested that Declan might want to choose his next words with more care. Whitaker looked at me. Miss Harmon, as majority shareholder, you may bring motions before this board. Do you wish to do so? I stood. Warren was on his feet before I finished the sentence. Thomas, this is a setup, Mr. Harmon. Whitaker's voice was quiet and absolute. Sit down. Warren sat. I looked around the table. At 12 people who, 90 minutes ago, had processed me as a support function employee whose name they couldn't reliably recall. I'm not proposing to remove Warren Harmon as CEO. Silence recalibrated. Declan looked up. Beverly's expression shifted, slightly curious. What I'm proposing, I continued, is a confidence motion. The board will vote whether Warren Harmon retains their confidence as CEO of Harmon Group Ventures. If the majority votes no confidence, he resigns per standard bylaws. If the majority votes confidence, I commit to a non-interference period for at least 12 months while I determine my long-term role as shareholder. This is theater, Declan said. This is a daughter punishing a father in a boardroom. No, I met his eyes. This is the mechanism Clifton Harmon wrote into the bylaws in 1968. The same mechanism he would have been entitled to invoke. I'm using it the way he intended it to be used, carefully, and only when necessary. I paused. If this company is being led well, a confidence vote should not concern anyone. Thomas Whitaker considered me for a moment. Second, seconded, Beverly said. All those expressing confidence in Warren Harmon as CEO, please indicate. 4 hands, all those expressing no confidence. 7 hands rose. Thomas Whitaker counted, removed his glasses. The motion carries 7-4 with 1 abstention. He turned to my father. Per Section 12.2 of the bylaws, Warren, you have 30 days to submit your resignation. My father didn't stand. He sat at the head of the table he'd occupied for 22 years and looked at me with the expression of a man confronting a fact he could not make smaller by looking away from it. He walked out without speaking. I want to pause here for just a moment. If you've ever been told you weren't enough by the people who were supposed to know you best, I want you to comment the word enough below, because you deserved better. And so did I. If you want to see what happened after I walked out of that boardroom, hit the like button and keep watching. We are not done yet. Now, back to the story. Warren found me in the corridor outside the boardroom. Declan was behind him. My mother had arrived during the recess, someone had called her, and her mascara had tracked itself down both cheeks. You, Warren's voice was barely controlled. You went to Patricia Engel. You went behind this family's back. Grandpa Clifton went to Patricia Engel, I said. I just answered the door when she knocked. You don't know what you've done? I know exactly what I've done. I've brought a legal document to a board meeting and asked 12 people to read it. Declan stepped forward. We'll challenge the will, you'll lose, I said. And Patricia Engel anticipated that you would try. My mother touched my arm. Celeste. Her voice came out small. Celeste, we were doing what we thought was right. We were trying to protect you from expectations you couldn't, from expectations I couldn't meet. I looked at her steadily. I just presented a legal case to a 12-person corporate board and won a confidence vote 7-4. Which expectation, exactly, did I fail to meet? She had no answer. I walked to the elevator. Behind me, I heard my mother say my name again. I didn't turn around. The elevator closed on my family's faces. For the first time in 29 years, I wasn't waiting for permission to leave. The adrenaline drained slowly on the ride down. What it left behind wasn't triumph. It wasn't even relief, exactly. It was something closer to grief. Because I'd spent so many years hoping that they would change, that if I was patient enough, composed enough, sufficient enough, they would eventually see me the way my grandfather had. That hope was finished now. I had ended it myself. The elevator opened onto the lobby. Patricia Engel was waiting near the security desk. How are you? She asked. I don't know yet. I exhaled. Ask me in a few weeks. She nodded. The board will want to schedule a transition meeting. Thomas said to take your time. She handed me a card with her direct line. Clifton said you'd try to give the board time before asserting any authority. He said that would be the right instinct. She paused. He was right about most things. May 26, 2024. Warren submitted his letter of resignation at 5:00 p.m. I found out through an email from Thomas Whitaker. Miss Harmon, your father has tendered his resignation, effective June 30th. The board has appointed me as interim CEO pending a search for permanent leadership. We are also formally offering you a seat on the advisory committee in your capacity as majority shareholder. Please respond when you're ready. I forwarded it to Patricia. Her reply came within the hour. Clean offer. No unfavorable terms. Congratulations, Celeste. That evening, a company-wide email went out. Effective June 30th, Warren Harmon will step down as CEO. Thomas Whitaker will serve as interim CEO. The board also welcomes Celeste Harmon in an advisory capacity as majority shareholder. My phone filled with messages from colleagues. People who'd worked beside me for 2 years without learning my full name suddenly had time and warmth to spare. I left most of them unanswered. One message I saved. It came from a woman named Lorraine Desai, an administrative coordinator who'd been at Harmon Group since 1991. Celeste, Clifton used to talk about you whenever he visited. He said you noticed things other people walked right past. I never quite understood what he meant. I think I do now. Some validation doesn't come from family. That kind is often worth more. The story reached the regional business press a week later. Harmon Group, founder's granddaughter assumes majority stake as secret will emerges. Warren and Diane declined all interview requests. Health reasons, according to their assistant. 3 of the company's institutional partners asked to meet with me directly. Two of them confirmed they'd maintain their relationship with the group going forward. "We've had reservations about Warren's direction for some time," one of them said. "Clifton built something worth preserving. It's good to see it in the right hands. I wrote it down. I didn't say anything to that." Beverly Akefer called on a Saturday. "How are you holding up? Still figuring it out. Ask me again in the fall." "Fair enough." She was quiet for a moment. "Clifton would have done exactly what you did. The confidence vote instead of termination. Giving Warren the chance he didn't earn." She laughed softly. "He always said that restraint was the most expensive thing you could offer someone who didn't deserve it. That's what made it worth offering." June 14th, 2024. 3 weeks after the board meeting, my phone rang at 1:00 p.m. Celeste. My mother's voice at reduced volume. "Can we meet? Just the two of us. Somewhere neutral." We met at a coffee shop on NW 23rd. Diane arrived before me and looked, for the first time in my memory, like a person rather than a performance. "Thank you for coming." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "I know I have no reason to expect you to." "What did you want to say?" "I want to apologize." The words came out carefully. "For how we raised you, for what we said, for what we failed to say." "Are you apologizing because you're sorry?" I asked. "Or because everything shifted?" She flinched. "Then both, honestly, both. I know that's not the right answer, but it's the true one." Her eyes filled. "I told myself we were protecting you from disappointment, but that wasn't kindness, Celeste. That was me not wanting to feel guilty about how we were choosing to see you. You let Dad dismiss me in front of investors and family members going back as far as I can remember. You never once pushed back." "I know." A tear moved down her cheek. "I know that, and I can't take it back, but I don't want to lose you entirely." I looked at the woman who had braided my hair when I was 5 and spent the next 2 decades treating my needs as a management problem. "I can't pretend the last 20 years were different from what they were," I said slowly. "But I'm willing to start from where we are now, honestly, without the version of me that you needed me to be." She nodded. She couldn't speak. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was the first conversation we'd ever had that was entirely true. August 2024. Declan called while I was walking the East Bank Esplanade. I almost didn't pick up. "Celeste, I know I don't have any standing to call you, but there's something I need to say in person." We met at a bench near the river. The August light came in flat and steady. Declan sat like someone whose certainty had been redistributed and hadn't fully resettled. "I started therapy in June," he said, 3 times a week." "Okay. I've been thinking a lot about the way things worked in our family." He stared at the water. "Being the favored one isn't actually a good place to be raised from. It just looks that way from the outside." I waited. I told myself that the way Mom and Dad treated you was just how the family was structured, that you'd find your path in a different direction. He paused. "The truth is I didn't challenge it because challenging it would have cost me something I wasn't willing to pay." He looked at me. "That's not an excuse." "I know it isn't. I see you now. I couldn't before. I think I chose not to." "I'm sorry it took this long. What do you want from me, Declan?" "Nothing." He shook his head. "I just needed you to know that I understand it, finally. What I didn't do, what it cost you. I can't return to how things were," I said. "But I'm not interested in permanent estrangement. Maybe we build something new from the actual ground." His eyes went wet. He nodded. It wasn't the brother I'd needed growing up, but it might become something real. November 2024. I moved into an apartment in the Pearl District. 2nd floor, tall windows, a clear view of the river my grandfather had looked out over from his back porch for 40 years. The rent was more than I'd ever paid. I could afford it now. My new role as Director of Community Impact at Harmon Group, a division I'd proposed and the board had approved, came with a salary of $172,000, plus shareholder dividends. The division's focus: sustainable development partnerships, affordable housing assessments, local community land initiatives. The kind of work that asked what a company owed to the place that held it. Warren called once a month. Short calls, careful, polite. We both agreed, without saying so, that the past was not a place to live. Deanne and I had dinner on alternate Fridays. We were learning to have actual conversations. Declan and I walked the waterfront on Sunday mornings sometimes. We were telling each other the truth about things, for the first time, the way you can only do once you've stopped protecting an old story. On the wall of my apartment, I'd hung a photograph of my grandfather, the one from the 1962 groundbreaking, hand extended toward empty land, the city behind him, everything still possible. Some evenings, the light came in low and long, and I'd look at him looking at that empty lot and understand what he meant. You notice what others ignore. That wasn't a consolation. That was the job 6 months ago. I was invisible inside my own family. Now I was something else. I hadn't fully named it yet, but I was myself, entirely, for the first time. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you that being overlooked is not the same as being unworthy, I want to hear from you. Subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so you never miss a story like this one. Leave a comment and tell me, have you ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better? What did you do? And if you want more stories about ordinary people who found the courage to stand up for themselves, the link is in the description. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Until next time.